The Caribbean is about to become a war zone, and Donald Trump just made that crystal clear. 10 advanced F-35 stealth fighter jets are being deployed to Puerto Rico as part of operations against Latin American drug cartels designated as narco-terrorist organizations by Washington. But this isn't just another military exercise. The Trump administration is considering attacks on drug trafficking groups inside Venezuela, which would mark a dramatic escalation in already surging tensions between Washington and Caracas. This deployment comes on the heels of something unprecedented. The U.S. carried out a strike against a drug-carrying vessel that departed from Venezuela and was operated by the Tren de Aragua gang, killing 11 people on board.
Their capabilities is quite impressive. It's one of the strongest we have in the arsenal. They're equipped with Tomahawk and vertical launch ASROC missiles. Those are anti-sub rocket missiles, very significant. They also can carry nuclear-tipped missiles. They're equipped with the Aegis weapon system. That's what makes these destroyers very unique. And they can reach speeds up to 30 knots, which makes them very swift and very quick and can maneuver at a moment's notice. Finally, they all carry 2 LAMPS helicopters. What's that? Those are light, airborne, multi-purpose systems. They're also known as Seahawks. Sikorsky Seahawks, they can maneuver in very urban areas or overseas, depending on what they need to do. There's also a nuclear-powered submarine that is following along with these. So quite a lot of power, sending quite a strong message to international waters off Venezuela, a message being heeded by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who has mobilized over 4 million militia members to try and combat this if there is some sort of incursion. Today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio heading to Latin America as he begins a trip to Mexico and Ecuador. The State Department says will center on discussions towards dismantling the cartels, halting fentanyl trafficking, and ending illegal immigration. Joining us now to discuss is security specialist and cartel expert Ed Calderon. Ed, what do you make of the ships that are being sent and how Maduro is responding to this? And do you think ultimately that Secretary Marco Rubio's trip can sort of help foster these other Latin American countries?
Trump said the strike occurred while the terrorists were at sea in international waters transporting illegal narcotics, heading to the United States. And this was just the beginning. Multiple sources told CNN Tuesday's strike was just the beginning of a much larger effort to rid the region of narcotics trafficking and potentially dislodge Maduro from power. The military buildup is staggering. American warships and a large number of Marines, as well as a nuclear-powered fast attack submarine, have been deployed just outside Venezuelan territorial waters, with ships armed with Tomahawk missiles, an attack submarine, a range of aircraft, and more than 4,000 U.S. sailors and Marines all positioned near Venezuela.
It is the great history that has returned and will never leave. The time of glory has returned. It is the time of the great homeland. And with the free homeland and the original project, it is the best. From these beautiful Caracas that saw us born and that fill us with inspiration every day, from these Caracas in peace, free, rebellious, and beautiful, I can tell you, President Xi Jinping, dear brother, Chinese people, from these Caracas, free, rebellious, sovereign, and Bolivarian, we say to you, here, we give you this monument, this monumental square, as a tribute to the 80 years of the victory of the Chinese people.
These vessels include guided missile destroyers and cruisers equipped with Aegis weapon systems, capable of reaching speeds of 30 knots and launching precision strikes from hundreds of miles away. But why F-35s? These aren't your average fighter jets. They're the most advanced stealth aircraft in the world, costing over $80 million each. Dan Grazier, the senior fellow and director of the National Security Program at the Stimson Center, said selecting the stealth strike fighter likely was less about strategy and all about messaging. This is Trump sending a very clear signal to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. We have the capability to strike anywhere, anytime, without you even knowing we're coming. The legal implications are mind-blowing. Earlier this year, Trump authorized the military to carry out lethal operations against cartels his administration designated as terrorist groups, a move in which the president appeared to claim the power to treat suspected smugglers not as criminals, but enemy combatants. Presently, there is no congressional authorization that would allow for military action against drug cartels, and never before has drug trafficking been treated as terrorism. Maduro isn't backing down. Venezuela's president called on Friday for the U.S. to abandon its plan of violent regime change in Venezuela and in all of Latin America, and said the U.S. should respect sovereignty, the right to peace, to independence. But he's also preparing for war. Maduro has mobilized Venezuela's military, which numbers about 340,000 soldiers, amid weeks of U.S. threats, and reservists and militia members, which he claimed exceed 8 million, warning that if Venezuela were attacked, it would immediately enter a period of armed struggle. The tension escalated dramatically when the Pentagon accused Venezuela of a highly provocative flight on Thursday by fighter jets near a U.S. warship. Trump's response was chilling. Trump said aircraft that get too close to U.S. ships will be destroyed, saying, "Well, I would say they're going to be in trouble," when asked what would happen if Venezuelan jets fly over U.S. warships. The strategy behind this massive military deployment goes deeper than just stopping drugs. Multiple sources told CNN that some Trump officials believe the strike this week and future strikes on Venezuelan drug traffickers could put pressure on people around Maduro who have benefited from the cartel's illicit revenue streams, potentially squeezing them so much that they consider ways to oust the Venezuelan leader. The preferred course of action is for Maduro to leave on his own to read the tea leaves. Trump has been crystal clear about his intentions. From the Oval Office on Friday, Trump, when asked by a reporter whether strikes will be a regular action, said, "It depends on the individual instance, and we don't want drugs coming in from Venezuela or anybody else or anyplace else, and we'll be tough on that." Trump said he was going to continue ordering lethal strikes against smugglers, saying, "And when I see folks coming in, like loaded up the other day with all sorts of drugs, probably fentanyl mostly, but all sorts of drugs, we're going to take them out." The designation of these cartels as terrorist organizations is unprecedented. In February, Trump designated Venezuela's Tren de Aragua, as well as 6 groups in Mexico and MS-13 in El Salvador, as foreign terrorist organizations. The designation is normally reserved for groups like Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State group that use violence for political ends, not for money-focused crime rings such as the Latin American cartels. But the Trump administration argues the international connections and operations of the groups, including drug trafficking, migrant smuggling, and violent pushes to extend their territory, warrant the designation.
Basically, take up arms and in defense of his kind of indefensible regime.
Yeah, and you see the numbers are just night and day from this year to last year at the border. In fact, the interim Border Patrol Sector Chief Walter Soslar of El Paso saying that they've cost the cartels some $1 billion. I don't know exactly if that can continue, but ultimately the Trump administration has taken the fight to these cartels, and they are making all of Latin America on notice that they better join in the fight because this is a fight they intend to win. I'll give you the last 20 seconds. How do you see this fight going? Can the Trump administration crack down and stop it all?
We've just seen the election of now judges in Mexico that just took power yesterday, which is a step backwards. There are clear signs that this is shifting. Cartels are being dissolved. Sinaloa cartel is basically extinct now. There's just elements of it remaining, and coyotes at the border are struggling to remain in business. Things are changing and moving towards significant changes with this administration.
Well, the Trump administration is certainly cracking dead. Ed Calderon, thank you for your insight. We're going to continue to watch that coast of Venezuela to see what develops. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been equally aggressive in his rhetoric. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio this week defended Trump's military approach towards what Washington calls narco-terrorist groups saying what will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. While in Mexico on Wednesday, Rubio added more detail to the boat strike, saying, instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, we blew it up, and it'll happen again. Maybe it's happening right now. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been equally blunt. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said on Fox and Friends that Maduro was running his country as a kingpin of a drug narco state. Coming from a drug cartel is no different than coming from al-Qaeda, Hegseth proclaimed to reporters. We smoked a drug boat and there are 11 narco-terrorists at the bottom of the ocean, and when other people do that, they are going to meet the same fate. The scope of the military deployment is unprecedented for a counter-narcotics operation. The 22nd MEU, part of the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, left Norfolk Aug. 14, bound for the Southern Caribbean. That force included more than 4,500 sailors and Marines on 3 ships: the Wasp-class amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima and San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock ships, the USS San Antonio and USS Fort Lauderdale. Those vessels remain off the southern coast of Puerto Rico, where Marines and sailors were conducting amphibious landing training. But Trump insists this isn't about regime change. Trump said on Friday that the U.S. was not talking about regime change in Venezuela, but we are talking about the fact that you had an election which was a very strange election, to put it mildly, referring to Maduro's return to office in January following claims of vote irregularities in the country's presidential election. The implications extend far beyond Venezuela. President Trump's vow to send warships to the Caribbean and elsewhere in Latin America to stop the flow of drugs to the United States is being seen as more than just a threat to Venezuela. It could apply to many countries in this region. They say today it may be Venezuela, tomorrow it could be any one of them. Legal experts are sounding alarm bells. Experts say the administration's actions could open up a new series of forever wars, referring to the U.S. military's decades-long involvement with terrorist organizations in the Middle East. The precedent being set here could reshape how America conducts military operations around the world. The F-35 deployment represents more than just advanced military hardware. It's a psychological warfare tactic. These stealth fighters can strike targets without being detected by radar, making them the perfect weapon for surgical strikes against cartel leadership. The message to Maduro and the cartels is clear: nowhere is safe. As these F-35s take their positions in Puerto Rico, the Caribbean stands on the brink of a new kind of warfare. Trump has fundamentally changed the rules of engagement in the war on drugs, treating smugglers not as criminals to be arrested, but as enemy combatants to be eliminated. The deployment of America's most advanced fighter jets signals that this administration is prepared to use overwhelming military force to achieve its objectives. The question now isn't whether Trump will escalate further, it's how far he's willing to go. With F-35s in the sky, destroyers in the water, and Marines ready for action, the stage is set for a confrontation that could reshape the entire region. Maduro has called Trump's bluff before, but with stealth fighters now in the mix, the Venezuelan leader might be facing his biggest challenge yet. This isn't just about stopping drugs anymore, it's about demonstrating American military supremacy in a region where rival powers have been gaining influence. The F-35 deployment sends a message not just to Venezuela, but to China, Russia, and any other nation that thinks they can challenge American interests in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela's response has been defiant, yet calculated. Venezuelan officials have declared that they will stand firm with serenity, with firmness, with unbreakable faith in victory and in peace. They warn that while Venezuelans are peaceful people, they are warriors, brave when anyone messes with their land, with their history, and with their rights. The stage is set for a confrontation that could define the future of the entire region. The Caribbean has become the new front line in Trump's vision of American dominance, and the F-35s are just the beginning of what promises to be an unprecedented show of force.